Okay. So I know I just mentioned this, but I really do like my glasses. If I must say so myself, I really do. People don't want to age. And I'm like, wait, what am I about to say? People don't like aging.
Right. Well, but the thing is, it does beat the alternative. That's what my grandma used to say. So
it does.
Of the two.
Beat the alternative. But I will say this. So I think about my dad. My dad once, and I know it's so off topic, but my dad once had to borrow my mother's readers. And she had these sort of red Sally, Jesse, Raphael readers. And so I have a picture of him peering down with these red readers on the tip of his nose so that he can read stuff. And I thought, if I ever get to that place, I am not doing that. I still have to look good with my readers.
I mean, they're gorgeous. You have, I don't know if it's just innate aesthetics or being a photographer or some combination of the two, but primo.
I appreciate it, ma'am. So we're back at the dinner table.
We are back.
A lot has happened since we last had dinner.
Yes.
Since we last had dinner, a lot has happened. And so today we are talking about community. So you want to go over that really quick? And then we can get into it.
Yeah. So one of the things that, as you know, I love a definition. So I started with Oxford and talking about what is community, so we could kind of set that stage. And there's two definitions here. I a little lean towards the first one, people living in the same place, and some characteristics, although what we were talking about when we sort of talked about this was that understanding how to kind of be in that zone with people where you are watching out for your neighbors, but they don't actually have to be like your best friends. So you don't have to have a lot in common other than that maybe you live in the same place and you think that it's important to take care of the people around you in some fashion. But that was kind of the place I started.
Well, with that, let us make sure let's just get some appetizers out and then we'll get into all the nitty gritty.
All right.
I should find out who actually owns that song. I was like, such a good. I'm like, you gotta love it. So, okay. So let's talk about that, shall we? Let's get into our appetizer. Let's kind of get this started. So I'm gonna start with you. What is community? And what does it mean to you? So you've defined it. So in your worlds, what does community mean to you?
So that's a good question because I sort of have several ways of thinking about it. And one of them is that sort of general feeling of communalness with the people around me. And that feels like one important thing. And then there is my community. And that would probably go to that second definition more, which is the people that I feel I have things in common with, shared attitudes or beliefs and ways of approaching solving problems. And I feel like I need both. I need those people that I can relax with and have shared, real like same attitudes and ways of thinking about things. And then also need the people who are around me that I may not, have over for dinner, but I don't want harm to come to them.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like I wrote down my immediate thoughts and I wrote down, similar values. We may very well have the same interests. So I think as a photographer or a creative or a podcaster, we have the same interests. And so you find yourself being part of this creative community.
Right.
And then there are the people that I spend time with. And those people that span the gamut. In those areas, we have the same, I'm going to use moral compass, the same interests for everyone's well-being, society, blah, blah, blah. So I can see where we are. I believe everyone's part of a variety of communities.
Mm-hmm.
And then you think about like your neighborhood, right? Now, I may not know all my neighbors, but I do know like a certain set. And so I'm part of that overall arching community. Like this is my community. Even though I may not know this person, if it impacts one, it impacts all of us. So we are definitely part of a variety of communities, which just so happens to be what we are serving up today. That is what we have on the table. No more appetizers. It's time for our
We're ready.
Okay. So now we got a definition down. Let's talk about it, because the last time we were chatting, we had mentioned, and I often say that, the human experience is best served, lived with other good humans. It's like something that is just natural for us to want to be around other humans. What say you, ma'am?
Yeah, I think in addition to modern psychology that has actually studied that, like they've shown they did those horrible experiments on children in orphanages, babies that died because they weren't getting enough touch. Like we as human creatures legitimately need other human creatures simply to be around. And that's a basic part of who we are. And then there's all of the indigenous wisdom and knowledge around how critical it is for us to have our communal actualization as well as individual actualization. So this is a chart that was created by a gentleman, or a person, I should say, Terry Cross, and is referenced in an article that I'll share the link for, the Blackfoot wisdom that inspired Maslow's hierarchy. And that was an acknowledgement. So many people have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and it was lifted, I know you're shocked, from an indigenous community. And it ignored the parts of it that were a core piece of it, which is this belonging and relationship, as well as food, water, housing, safety, and security, as well as spirituality and life purpose. And those are communal needs as well as individual needs. So,
yeah, I'm looking at this chart, and I'm looking at the 4 different areas, and I'm saying to myself, it's like, oh, wait a minute. And it's speaking to me clearly, because I think about, let's just bring that up since you mentioned it. Let's bring it up, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I'm looking at the Western perspective, and I'm looking at the First Nations perspective, right? The individual rights, privilege, one lifetime scope of analysis. And then over here, there's this bigger focus on community. It's so interesting because we were having this conversation and the days all run together right now, so forgive me. But we were having this conversation, and somebody mentioned in terms of the Black community, how we have lost touch with the children, right? That the kids are getting all their info from like TikTok or social media in general, and we need to fix the way that we talk to our kids. And this is in response to the DNC, like the Democratic, Party, speaking to younger people or being able to work with the algorithm. And I thought to myself, I don't think that's it. Like my immediate thought was, at some point, Black people decided to give up on what they had always known, which was this, I'll say, this innate community. Because when I think about, there's a book written by Isabel Wickerson, and I want to say The Warmth of Other Suns. I may get that title wrong, but I will get the right title. It talks about Black segregation and the Black migration. And she was speaking about how up until the point of things being, divided, Black folks supported other Black people. You went to Black doctors and Black schools and Black stores, and you kept the Black dollar in the Black community, and it was us against the world because we were all we had. But there was this illusion that having a white doctor was better and going to a white school was better and all these things. And so you start to break down the walls, people start migrating to other states, and they had this idea that it would be different now, but it was still the same. Like the response to the Black presence was still the same. But you fast forward, people get a little bit of comfort, a little bit of power, or the illusion of power, and you start letting go of what you've always known and done. I come from the village, raised a child. Our parents, like our neighbors, everybody knew everybody's parent. You could literally knock on the door and borrow an egg. You could borrow a cup of sugar. If so-and-so said to not play in the street, you were like, yes, ma'am, no, sir, yes, sir. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
We went from this community to everybody working or operating in silos, as you mentioned once before. And so I think to myself, looking at this chart is interesting when I look at the Western perspective compared to the First Nations perspective. Like it's
Yeah.
I need to. I'm processing, if you will.
Well, and to speak to, I thought about this a lot, like because when my kids were younger, I sort of noticed that when I was the first house we lived in, or the second house we lived in, when they were old enough to kind of go out in the neighborhood a little bit, I was surrounded by people that had been in that neighborhood for 30 and 40 years. So they were kind of old school. If they saw my kids doing something they didn't like, they'd be like, hey, and they'd tell the kids. And then I moved to Colorado, and I was in a more modern suburb, and we didn't know anyone, no one would say anything. And I thought, well, that's so bad, because what happens then is kids learn, because they're smart, they observe the world they live in, that all they have to do is make sure they look like they're doing the right thing kind of in front of their parents. And whatever they do anywhere else, they know no one's going to call them on it. And so that like, which isn't to say all kids would behave that way. However, that's absolutely what they're going to learn, is that how you behave only matters in front of the right people.
Right.
And that to me is a very bad lesson to disseminate. Very bad.
I think about it because I think I reflect on moments I have been in, let's just say, a store, and there was some child playing around the escalator, which we have seen, like escalators can cause major damage if you're not careful, even to adults. Like you got to be careful. And so there was a time where you could tell a child, hey, don't play on that. Like you want to be careful. And the adult, the parent be like, oh my God, thank you. But nowadays it's like, don't talk to my kid. That's not your child. You shouldn't tell. It's like your kid's about to be snatched up or hurt, harmed on this escalator because you're not watching. So it's just the mindset is like just.
It's received as an attack. Like, I think you're failing instead of recognizing that actually we're kind of all in this together, and no one can look all the time at everything. Like it's literally impossible. And so by removing this communal responsibility, we've then put everything on the parent, which they're of course going to fail. It's not possible.
No, it's not possible.
It's completely possible. And so then they can become more defensive. Like you can see it lined out. And what I loved about the First Nations and the first chart we showed was like someone who was like, didn't love the triangles. It was like the circle feels more like it kind of represents that Indigenous perspective, which is that it's all entwined. I cannot be individually actualized if my community is also not actualized. We have an interdependent relationship, and the Western and the modern, sort of very white supremacy focus, right, is to really highlight that individualism in a way that is at the expense of the community experience and sort of diminishes and demeans it. And I think you're really onto something. We were talking about the Black community having that innate knowledge of community. They had to survive, right?
Yeah.
And that, and the resistance to that from the dominant culture, from the white perspective, is part of the problem, I think, that we're dealing with in terms of many of these things, because it really shouldn't matter to me anything other than this is my place and I watch out for the people in my place. I don't have to like them. I don't have to think they're cool. I don't have to agree with them on anything to not want them to fall on the ice and to, help out if they can't shovel their walk or whatever.
Right.
But there's a weird kind of thing now about that, right?
Oh man, when I find myself writing down so many thoughts because, all the stuff is in my head. And you find yourself saying, like I think about, in general, parenting. And I don't know, I guess I may throw a little blame at Gen X. All the babies who were having babies who decided that I'm going to be my child's friend versus being a person to lead. Because my parents, those boomers, what did they know? What did they possibly know? Okay, so we went from some of the I'm going to lead you. And it's not that, yes, I'm Paris, I'm always right. It shouldn't be that. But somebody has to lead the train. And we went to this whole deal of entertaining the child at every moment. So, I mean, I go out to a restaurant, I sit down, and I see parents, I see people on, I guess, a date, and everybody has their nose in technology. The child gets a tablet to keep itself, I say itself, pardon me there, entertained. Whereas, my dad, up until the point he could no longer sit at the table and cook for his wife, he had us eat at the kitchen table. Okay? And I mean that. So we're talking 2022. I remember our very last Thanksgiving in 21. Whenever I would go to visit, myself, my husband, whomever, if father cooks, and father cooked because mother didn't cook, we ate at the table every single time. I am 40 plus years old with my dad saying, I'm going to call you one time. You come to this table and let's eat and put your phones. Like, we couldn't have phones at the table. No phones, no TV, still. Okay. And people, at one point we lost it. I will say in this regard, society lost that place of having a conversation at the table. We lost it. We gave it up for something else. Now, my father, and I'm saying it, he didn't pass away until 2022. So he held on to the tradition of eating as a family and having a conversation at the table until he was gone from this world. You don't have to give in. You don't have to do what everybody else does, as my mother says. These are choices that we make. These are choices. It's the first thing I bought when I got married was I went and bought a kitchen table. So my husband and I could sit at the table and have dinner. And he was like, what? I was like, we got to have a table. We always eat at the table. And he's like, I don't have, not great. He's the best. Okay, great. He had a dining table, surprise, surprise, but not a kitchen table. I was like, we need a kitchen table.
Yeah.
For families, things.
Family
He's
thing.
like, I was like, yeah. That's where it goes down. It's the kitchen table. That's where all the conversations go down. It's the kitchen table. But okay, so as we stay on this community, and I know we have veered off into parenting and that kind of thing, but it's really all related.
I think so.
If you really think about it, because I go back, I want to lean towards this other topic that comes with, and this is where I believe community comes into play, and it is the unspoken society holiday pressures, because we're about to get to the holidays. And this society has a way of making you feel, and I use the word making you feel, which is also, again, a choice, because no one can make you do anything you don't want to do. We choose to accept it. I mean, people say really ignorant things all day about me, but I never hear them. I was like, you got the wrong one. So you have to choose it. But our society throws these messages about the holidays and how you should be surrounded by all these people and be invited to 5,000 parties. And if you're not, something's wrong with you.
Yeah.
That's where your community comes into play. No?
Yeah. Well, and I think the one of the things that you had mentioned when we were talking about this topic earlier is you talked about hard conversations, but I also think like being able to be honest is really helpful. Like I call my dad, I usually try to see him over the holiday. And I was like, I just spent a bunch of time with my daughter and I'm not sure I want to drive. And I can call him and say that. And he doesn't get all up in his feel. There's no drama. He's like, okay, well, it's fine. It's good either way. Just let me know the weekend before. And then we're done. Whereas
Mhm.
I know people who could never have that conversation with a friend or a family member because it would turn into a thing about,
Yes.
how do you, and I feel like you know, establishing that where you can with people, where it's completely appropriate to say something that about your intentions that is honest. It's just different than being mean. Like I didn't call up and say I never want to see you. I was just like, I'm not sure I want to drive. And that's okay, right? And that honesty and that as a default, I think is a really important thing for people to get more comfortable with and to kind of go back to what you were saying. Like when we're on our phones and we're distracted, it's harder to be honest in that way because we're not present. We're not really paying attention to the other person. We're not like really, tuned in, if you will. And so we may not notice the cues. Oh, maybe it's not a great time, like, whatever. Because there is sometimes, like, if someone's in the middle of
Yes.
something, you don't dump a bunch of stuff on them. That's rude. So I don't know. I think that's a part of it. And the community part for me does start with that ability to actually trust everyone to say what's happening for them without agenda.
It's almost as if you read my notes and I didn't even put them in our notebook. Like you didn't even read. I didn't even share these notes, and yet and still somehow you have been able to get in my head. So if not if we're gonna go back to this, let's go back to. I'm gonna bring it back up. Let's talk about communication skills, because people find themselves to be great communicators, and the fact of the matter is, and I put myself in there too. I had to grow in my communication skills over time. Obviously, it starts with a certain level of self-awareness. So yeah. But I remember telling my team very often that a lot of people listen to respond and they don't listen to hear. And hearing, like communicating, is not just the words coming out of somebody's mouth, it is word choice. It's the tone that's used, it's the body language, and like all of this is part of the conversation. I remember talking to people and I would watch them and they would be tapping like on the armchair or shaking their leg, like all this stuff. And I'm thinking, are you nervous? And you're like, well, yeah. It's like, well, why
Mm-hmm.
are you nervous? Because
Mm-hmm.
I hear the words coming out of your mouth, but your body is saying something completely different. So clearly, we need to have a different conversation here, like not. And just because I put something out in the world does not mean that that message was received. So, like on a work level, I would say, please tell me what you heard and have
Mm.
them tell me in their own words. It's like, that wasn't the message. I'm going to try it again. And so we explain again. And I know for myself, when people are talking to me, if I don't get them, like, I'm sorry, I don't know what you just said. Would you please rephrase that? And if I still don't get it, I go back to, okay, color me simple. It's not registering for me. So I need to understand. And I am known on camera, off camera, to literally go through my communication process. And I'll say, I'm trying to find the right word. I'm trying to say this graciously. And I hate to use the word try, but in that moment, I really am. I am being intentional with what I'm about to say. Or I will say, somebody please help me. I'm working through understanding this because I don't understand XYZ. So here's what I'm hearing, and here's what I don't understand. But a lot of people, and I'm going to say in this society, because I don't know any other, we make people feel bad. I know I'm using some very simple words, but we make people feel bad for asking questions and for not understanding immediately. And we create these spaces where it is hard to have a conversation. These are not hard conversations. They're never, in my opinion, these are just words and we're just talking. So, because you can't get anywhere when we don't have a conversation, right? But they make it appear to be hard conversations. If you were part of a community or a space that allowed you to show up as yourself, as in, I don't know everything. And sometimes people say stuff to me and they take too long, so I tune out. Like, if you just be who you are, no judgment, you probably have more people talking and saying things. But we wait until we get to like some dark alley. And we're like, hey, can I ask you about this? Because she had mentioned like these words. She had said SEM and SOP, and I don't know what any of that means. We don't create a space to be honest, to be open, to be vulnerable, to be curious. We don't have those spaces. But when you have a community that allows you to just be, then you are able to say something and not be judged for it. I know my friend Jo has said, please forgive me because I'm going to forget that she's non-binary and that her pronouns are this. And yeah, there's going to be a slip of the tongue somewhere because we are relearning something. Because we were just put on notice, this person is now. And so you're going to mess up. But to say out loud, please forgive me because this is not intentional. I'm putting my arms around it. I respect it. I want to make sure I'm respectful. But you only do that because someone has already told you you are free to learn in this time and space. This is a learning space. This is not judgment. This is not, I'm going to come for you and you're trying to, people know when you were doing things intentionally. You're purposely trying to harm somebody. But the communication part is I'm with you. The very first thing is being honest.
Yeah. And to go back to your point, being self-aware enough to be honest with yourself. Because I feel like I see that a lot. One of the things that I think causes a lot of disconnect for people is they pre-negotiate themselves away from what they want. Instead of saying, I really want us all to go to the amusement park. They're like, no one will do that. So I'm going to ask to go to the movies. And then everybody's like, let's go to the movies. And then they're really upset because they never get what they want. It's like, well, you never asked for what you want.
You never asked for it.
But it's, to even go further back, it's like there's a lot of folks that are really confused about the difference between discomfort and like a threat. Like if you say no to me, I might feel uncomfortable or a little rejected, but that's not a threat. But because we've gotten in this habit socially of being a little distracted, a less really, and I do feel like that's part of what you get out of what you were talking about with your dad, like being at the dinner table and you're talking about stuff and someone's like, why would you say that? You're like, well, because I thought that was the right thing to say, And it's not threatening to be wrong or uncomfortable or corrected, right?
You were so in my head. I was like, I said to myself, we need to add into there. Some people come into the conversation with the idea of having to be right or to win. And it's like, that's not the part of the conversation. It's an exchange of thoughts, ideas, joy, could be anger, but we don't have to agree. And it's not about winning. And I tell people, it's not about being right. They're like, you know what? You're right. I'm not trying to be right. I want to talk to you. I want to understand where you're coming from. But that's like the white flag. You know what? You're right. Now, is there a place when you have to realize that you cannot argue with an ass? Yes. Yes. Don't waste your energy on that. But we should be open to just having a conversation. Can I go back to a point you made?
Oh, yeah.
And I want to show this because I thought about it. Now, you and I are part of a digital or virtual community. And although we have never truly been in each other's space, I feel extremely connected.
Same.
But the one thing that is true there, that is true in the physical space, is that sharing of ideas and interests and conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Like we still have that. So when people talk, and I'm one of them, when I talk about technology and how it can be, it is distracting. I go to a place of it's a fine line for everything. It's a fine balance, right? I mean, even as kids, now granted, I'm a 70s baby.
Mm-hmm.
You know the idea of having a TV in the house. A TV in the house was like there was the one TV console
Mm-hmm.
that everybody watched that had like it had the LP player and the 8-track player. I am dating all of myself. And no one stole it because it was heavier than sin. It's like no one's taking this. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then we progressed to where like you go to people's homes now, the kids have a TV, the kitchen has a TV, the TV has a TV.
It's a picture in a picture, right?
Right, picture in a picture, right? Picture in a picture. But it feels as if with all this technology, again by choice, we are lonelier than ever.
Yeah.
There are people, again, I mean, they're out on a date. And the first thing you do is you grab your phone, and instead of the two of you talking over appetizers, you grab your phone. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, do people, y'all don't talk anymore? But then I thought, don't you learn and help me work out this idea as I go through my thoughts, right?
Yeah.
Do you learn how to have conversations from your family, like your immediate community? Is that where you learn to talk to people? So if your parents don't talk to you, your granny, whoever, your grandfather, your auntie, how do you, because there is school, yes, but even at school, some of that social building, I still believe, comes from home. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
no? Am I going too far? Help me out.
I'm going to agree with you. I think yes. I think also, that's what, play dates were. You take your kids to and cousins. I feel like cousins were a big part of that.
Yes, yes.
And when we were growing up, we weren't allowed to be in the house, so we had to learn how to talk to our neighbors, the other neighbor kids. If only because we wanted to negotiate, which houses we could go into for water and bathroom breaks without over pressuring one of the moms. Like that mom's not okay till 5, but this one's okay, and that one will give us an otter pop. So like you're gonna
that was definitely you did have some negotiations, right?
And that's what you had to do. You had to negotiate with your friends, and you guys had to figure it out. And that's not it's tricky because I love technology so much. And so I was in the Hurricane Helene, and I was sharing with you I had no power, no internet. Right. We're driving like in the night, like I felt like I was driving for dial-up to get cell service so we could find things out. And it really reminded me of like how nice it was to just be present. Like I didn't have access to distraction. Mm-hmm. And I've been slowly trying to wean myself because I feel like I was, a little bit too fidgety with my phone. Anyone who spent time with me be like, yeah. And I have been really working to get away from that because I realized I wasn't having the type of connection with the people in my world that I wanted to. Yeah, it was, essentially that sort of loneliness. And because that's the price of, or I guess the entry price to connection is discomfort.
Ooh, so you know what? You're always saying such amazing things. I love that. Go ahead, please. I'm sorry. I got so excited hearing you say that.
But that's what I was thinking about is like that fear of being wrong or being uncomfortable or not knowing something. That's what you have to walk through to have connection. And we have to give each other some grace. We can't just stand on the, well, how do you not know that? Well, it's because, we gotta work it out together.
that was, when I say brilliant, it was so well said, because it is like, you have to, people don't want to be vulnerable, people don't want to be their authentic selves. I'm an oddball. Now, I've been saying it for a while. I'm an odd duck. You know,
In the
when I'm
best
an
of
odd duck,
ways.
I'm an odd militant duck at that.
Mhm.
I'm an odd militant duck, as I remember just last year when we were carpooling in this conference. And, I share a little commentary when I drive. And so there was a third person who said, did she just answer herself? And they were like, yeah, it's a thing, just like ride with it. Because it's just,
Mhm.
yeah. We, like, everybody has their idiosyncrasies and what have you, what makes them special. Because we're all special.
Yeah.
Everybody is special. We are all
Yeah.
one click away from being crazy, so trust. Literally, it's like, I know that crazy. You're my kind of crazy. You know what I mean? So, but that's what it is. But when we don't, if you don't do the play dates, create a space for, we're gonna say, a child,
Mhm.
get their social skills up, like have cousins. Because if there's
Mhm.
anybody who you're gonna fight with first, probably your cousins. If you don't have, like, if you're the only, then you have cousins who become like your siblings, because that's who you have. Or you have your neighborhood friends, but I don't know how many kids go out and play anymore.
Mhm.
And like play.
Yeah.
Then, you find yourself in these situations where technology should be filling in the gap. And nothing against technology. I love a good machine. These machines are always listening to my conversation. Sometimes they put themselves in. It's like no one's talking to you. But that machine, in my opinion, cannot replace the joy of belonging to a group of those who are like you. If we're all odd ducks, if we are all oddballs,
Yeah.
it
Well,
just,
what you're talking about too, like vulnerability, if most people just take a moment and think, what are the most satisfying experiences you've ever had? Most of those experiences started with some element of risk. You applied for something, a job you weren't sure you were going to get. You took a trip you were, nervous about with a new friend. There's so many places. You took a class that you didn't know if you were smart enough, and maybe you failed it. And then you realized, "Oh, I'm still okay." Like, it's not about all of the risk turning into some lifetime story of achievement. It's about it's about actually taking the risk and seeing how that opens up for you in yourself and your knowledge of yourself and your opportunities to connect.
Mhm.
Saying hello to your neighbor can feel like a risk because we're so conditioned not to. And some
Yes.
people will not say hi back, or they will think you are weird. When I started using my phone as a phone and calling people, every time my friends picked up, they thought something was wrong
It's like
until
you
they
were in.
figured out I had just decided I was done with only texting. I just was like, no, I want to know my friends. I'm tired of doom
Yes.
scrolling on Facebook and still feeling lonely. And the only way it's going to change is if I change. And so I started using my phone like a phone. And it was weird at first. People was like, are you okay? And I'm like, yes, I'm okay.
Isn't that awful? It's like,
Uh-huh.
it is still a phone. You can still make phone calls on it. Like,
Yeah,
hello.
you're
It's
allowed
not
to.
just for everything else. I do more phone calls than I do text messaging.
Hmm.
Like, we'll take it back. I will do text messaging as a group, right? So we have a family chat, and then I have friends, but I have a couple of friends that if it's more than 2 or 3 text messages, it is a, hey, how's it going? Because it's too much work.
Yeah.
It's too
Yeah.
much work. But there's always somebody, depending on age, and I don't hate to say age, but depending on age, they go to why are you calling me? I'm texting for a reason. Well,
Hmm.
look, clearly you have a lot to say. Pick up the phone and, like, let's
Yes.
get to it.
Hmm.
In my head, it was always, and I taught my team this, if you have an emergency, you are not going to email me, right?
Gosh, yes.
Because email is snail mail. It'll get there when it get there. If you have an emergency, you pick up the phone. You don't email 911, you call 911.
Hmm.
People are like, well, I sent the phone, I sent the email, and I put the exclamation mark. Okay, and now keep in mind, your emergency is not my emergency, but still, if it's pressing, pick up the phone. Plus, certain things, if we go back to communication, written communication, people will often throw their own emotions when they read the email. They do this whole, maybe it's just me, but you do this whole tone thing and you imagine what it sounds like, and you find yourself putting all of this other emotion that was not part of the email into an email.
Did you see the Key and Peele skit about that? Because
I
if you
did not.
haven't,
I should look it
I
up.
am going to send that to you. Oh my gosh. It is so good. It's about texting, but it's absolutely on point with what you're talking about. It is.
It's the same. Like people, it's the context. Now, again, word choice makes a difference. So we're not gonna forgive that because there is word choice. But so many things can go wrong in the written part of communicating that it's just easy to pick up the phone instead of going back and forth. It's like, call them already. Call them instead of going back and forth. Pick up the phone, be like, what are you trying to do? Okay, great. You can't do it. Great, bye. It can be so simple, but we do this whole ping pong thing because we just don't want to. I have to wonder, and I know this goes away from our next topic of the benefits of belonging to a community, so we will go there. But I have to wonder, as children, as well, and okay, I had old parents. I had old school parents. We learned disappointment early on. So hearing no was never, it was like, just not yet, right? There was always, but I wonder if you do not get the chance to be disappointed early, how that impacts your growth and emotional intelligence. That people are like, well, I don't want to ask him out because he'll probably say no. I don't want to ask. I don't want to apply for that job. I don't want to apply because they'll probably say no. I don't know how many times I'm just like, hey, can I do this? No, okay, well, great. People are like, I want to ask about rolling PTO, but I was like, are we gonna ever get rolling PTO? Now, it's not my question, but because I grew up with learning how to handle disappointments, it didn't bother me to put my neck out there, because immediately afterwards, true story, the VP asked my boss, does Gwendolyn not use her PTO? And she's like, Dress, she uses all her PTO. Okay. She doesn't leave 1 hour, not a minute on the books. I took my time off. I earned it. I am gone. This was someone else's question. But again, we don't allow people to feel safe even in where they work in terms of asking questions, which means something went wrong somewhere.
Yeah.
So the benefit, one of those benefits of belonging to a community is being able to have someone that, again, you could just say, I don't understand this. Help me figure this out. And that could range from cooking to money to life experiences to handling different situations. It could be a variety of things because you feel comfortable with this, maybe one or two people, and saying, I don't fully understand this. What do you mean when you say, that's one of the benefits, I believe, of belonging to a community.
Yeah. Well, and I think what you said right at the beginning too is honestly people that help you check yourself, people that give you feedback that, you and I have talked about this before, but like my people are the ones that are going to tell me I have toilet paper on my shoe.
Right.
Do not let me walk around like that.
Right.
Do I want to be embarrassed? Not really. But would I much prefer to be embarrassed in front of people that are, that know me, that have more context for who I am? Yes. Do not let me do something when it is not ready for public consumption. Say the thing that might be quote unquote hurtful. Will I always react perfectly in the moment? Probably not. But I want to be in relationships where that's kind of okay, that, I can say something to you and you can respond in a graceless way because I hit a nerve, and then we can come back and talk about it and feel supported and learn from each other. And I think that's one of the huge benefits of community.
I was going to say, spot on. Because I think to myself, yes, I do hold myself accountable for what I say, but I also look to my friends to call me on the bullshit as well.
Yeah.
To be like, you know what, G, not so great. It's like, you know what, you're right. You're right. I should have caught that. My bad. I'll go back. I'll fix it. Because if no one wants it, we'll take it back. Some people do, but you don't get to grow and be a better person if you surround yourself with yes people.
No, exactly.
You just don't.
No,
There's
you
no
never learn.
growth there. There's no growth. You don't get to be that better version. It's just same old, and you wonder why things aren't coming your way because no one has told you that you're an asshole.
Right. Exactly. Or that this thing that you do communicates like something, communicates lack of confidence or whatever,
Right.
That's the
Right.
and it's I feel like that's such a huge benefit of community is being in a place where you're not always going to be comfortable because you're sometimes going to realize, oops. And the other part of it, and this is a little bit trickier, I think, is there's the friend community where that's kind of that, right? Where it's you could be graceless and I'm gonna still know that you're you. Give you some time for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's sort of the situational one, like my neighborhood, where it's obviously we still live here, so we have to find a way to work around it, but I might not have as much emotional space for it. I might just be like, I don't want to hear it. I'll still shovel your walk. Like,
right.
And I think that I feel like good boundaries, and I read something about this a while back, that like people that the better your boundaries are, the more willing you are to assert, I'm not hearing that, but I'll still help or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That actually allows for people to have more empathy. And they've done like studies, of course, because that's what we need more. but it's I think important for people to realize that having a good boundary and saying, this is what I can do, this is what I have to offer, this is how I can show up effectively and still take care of myself and my kids or my family or whatever, that only allows you to show up in a way that doesn't cause resentment, that doesn't create problems at home, and it allows you to stay in that place of empathy and grace for others.
Oh, boundaries. So much can be learned from being in a community. And one of those, as we talk about this, is participating. Now, here's how I look at it. Because I have found some people, when they are not genuine in why they are joining this community, things go sideways, right? So if you're not honest with yourself, then it's really hard to be honest with anybody else. But you just can't come. It's like going to a potluck, right? You decide to bring cups, which is probably necessary, but it doesn't require a lot of work. Not like the person who brought the cake and the entrees and the appetizers. Like, you just bring cups. And you bring cups a lot, but you take a great deal of food off the table every single time. You take a lot. You know how there are places, and we're in some of these spaces as well, where you have people who have great geniuses, and people are willing to share some of their genius with you. But then there's the one person who keeps coming for more and more and more, and is like, at some point, you really should pay this person for what you're asking for. Because now you've tipped over into the realm of, I want to come to your home and eat up a lot of things, but I'm not going to bring anything. Or I want to drink up all the alcohol at your bar, but I'm not bringing any bottles to replace what I have consumed.
Yeah.
That's like that becomes. So when we talk about participating, I always think about, and I love it, I love the ants. We have to build together.
Yeah.
We have to build together. If we build together, we can go so much. Is it farther or further? I keep forgetting. Which one is it? Is it further or is it farther? Me and my English class right now, my English lesson.
I feel like it's further, but I don't know if I'm going to look this up. We're gonna have a grammar lesson right now. Oh, by the way, Google immediately knew Farther refers to physical distance, while further refers to figurative distance. Everybody, your grammar lesson is now complete.
Further. We're going to go further. There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Google.
Like, see, the fact that we can be honest about not being sure which one it is, I now know which one it is going forward. Is that not beautiful? See how fast and easy that was? Building together, though. Building together. I know there are people, and I wrote this down as you were speaking, because we clearly have to come back to this for our next dinner. But it's about making friends, right? Making friends and being vulnerable. Now, first of all, if you don't open your mouth, I don't know how you're going to make friends. Yes, and I do. People, I'm an observer. I have always been a back of the classroom kid. I have always been as well a leader who led from the back of the group, not the front of the group, right? So I'm not always front and center. I sit in the back, I observe people, I watch people, I sort of sum them up. And there is always somebody who's like, hello, how are you? Can I sit next to you? I'm thinking, please don't. Please don't sit next to me. Like, and yet, it's still, next thing I know, people are sitting next to me and want to have a conversation. Okay, great. So yeah, let's have a conversation. You know, I am the introvert who has extrovert tendencies. I can't even remember the whole Ian. I think it's like, is it Ian SJ? I don't know. Doesn't matter for this conversation. But when I think about, you mentioned being vulnerable and making friends, that comes from opening your mouth, but more importantly, being vulnerable. Yeah. And there is, like, we haven't, if you haven't developed those communication skills or what have you, it makes it really hard. Now, how does all that come back to building or participating in a community? You have to do a little bit of talking. Do a little bit of talking and being open to doing some work, because it doesn't build itself.
Right. And listening too, right?
Listening.
And I think what you said too, paying attention, observing, because if you have to be asked for everything that you're going to contribute, I find that to be, it's not terrible. And the idea that, like, we always have to be asking for everything. Like, I get there's no mind reading, but there is noticing and saying, oh, look, I always bring cups and I always eat a lot. Maybe I'll ask one of the people who cooks if I can help them pay for food because I'm a crappy cook. Like, you can observe a way to participate and offer it. And then people could help you figure out, like, they could respond with a yes or a no. But I feel like that listening and observing is informing maybe how you open your mouth. Might be helpful. I'm working that out right now.
It's unspoken, but like any other relationship, it's got to be reciprocal.
Yeah.
Because if you come into a community, you cannot, and I know I shouldn't say can. I know I shouldn't say should and can, but I'm saying right now, you should not go into a community wanting to just take all the time.
Yeah.
You shouldn't do it. You should say, what am I bringing to the table? Right? It's like, how am I giving back to the people who I'm surrounding myself with? Nobody likes people who come in and just eat up everything, or they come in and they suck emotionally all the energy out of the room. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants it. I remember this person in one of the virtual spaces. She would come into the room and literally talk just nonstop, completely oblivious to everybody else and what is going on and how she was just like monopolizing the time. It's like, dude, are you not reading the room? Now, I know we're virtual. Some of us had our video cameras on, but you should also know, wow, I've been talking for 15 minutes about all the things I've done. It's me. And I thought to myself, I have got to get out of this goddamn room because she's killing me.
Yeah, right?
Killing me. And I was like, how do you operate in the world not understanding that networking 101 is never about you. It's about the other person. It's about the other people. So, participating means you're coming to the table, ready to serve someone else, prepared to make someone else's plate before you make your own.
I like
That's how
that.
that works.
I
That's
like
how that
that.
works. And if everybody has something to eat, we're all going to get full. Like everybody's gonna be like, it's gonna be okay. But if everybody brings, like, I was part of this running club, and it was never really spoken, but we just kind of on our own decided to take turns bringing water and bananas. Like we met outside of Tom Thumb's, the grocery store, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember, okay, you know what? So and so brought some stuff last week. I'm gonna bring water and bananas this week. And if everybody brings a little bit of everything, then everyone gets a banana and everybody has water to drink during
Mm-hmm.
the heat of summer, 9 o'clock at night in Texas. I mean, it's 9 o'clock and it's still 100 degrees. Lord bless all of us. So no one passes out, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But there's always one or two who are like, I don't see why I have to give. Like, I don't know why I have to give. But you're part of this community. You're taking from us still. Yeah.
No. So one of the things we talked about was, how do you build community? And I'm going to offer this thought that just came to me, which is when I was young, it was in a church group actually, and the leader was talking about how this guy that he knew had this list of characteristics that he wanted in somebody he was going to date. Like she was, beautiful and intelligent and athletic, and he was like, okay, that's cool. He goes, so you make your list of characteristics in the person you want to date, and then sit down and make a list of characteristics that person would be interested in dating, and then look and see how many of those characteristics you have. And I was just thinking that might be a great way to look at community. Like if there's a community you want to be part of, make that list. What is it that you're looking for? You're looking for people that support each other, that do shared meals, that call each other in, that go to dancing, whatever that is. And then think about, well, what does it mean then? What do you need to have as characteristics to be a participant? Do you need to have, whatever it is, like a space for people to gather? And that doesn't mean that if you don't have all of them, don't go to your perfectionism, please. But just, just recognizing that you need to really look at what can you bring that this community would be potentially interested in. And how do you show up in that way? Because I feel like in my life, the ways that I have found my people is by being a person those people would want to connect with.
Right.
And it's, and it is that, like, it really is that simple. And it's also not always easy.
Definitely not easy. I know I speak about creating a space for people to be authentic, focus on well-being, inner peace, right? Like I talk about it and I provide the space. I am like, hey, we don't have to agree. It's not about agreement here, but you do have to be respectful. And hate is not allowed. Like we're not going to mask hate with, well, these are my beliefs because of my religion. I'm not buying that brand today. Okay. We're not buying that.
That's not on the menu.
That's not on the menu. We're not buying that 15-day-old Chuck. No, we're not buying it.
I think it does go back to values, right? Like we don't have to agree on outcomes or perspectives, but we have to have shared values. We have to believe in mutual respect. We have to believe in civil discourse and sharing. I think that's a big one for me. And like honesty, self-awareness. There's values that I think allow for a communal expression, right? Whereas if I don't believe in, respectfully listening to someone and I'm constantly talking over them, we probably aren't going to do great.
We're not going to do well. I should say, I reflect on the multiple communities I'm a part of, like photographers, creatives, right? My family and what have you. And there are some people that, God bless it, if it takes a lot of me. It really is testing my patience that I still entertain conversations with them. Because one part of me is like, this is that simple bullshit that I don't have the energy for. I just don't have the energy for it. But yet and still, I kind of feel like, no, wait, everybody has. But, like with any relationship, that there's going to be a place where I'm over it. It's, and there have been some places of this isn't working. But it's interesting. As we are putting this dinner, we have come to a full meal here. That thought leads into what I want to talk about, what you and I can talk about at our next dinner, which is friends. Because we mentioned it here. And I know for myself, I'm old school. Everyone is not my friend. But I also wrote down in the midst of you discussing, being vulnerable and what have you, that there are a number of people who are fearful of making friends, not only because there's a fear of just being their authentic self, but somewhere around here, because we use the label incorrectly. And I said that. There is a real fear of friends who are looking to do you harm. Well, your friends wouldn't want to harm you, so there's that. But we have seen some instances, and I'll have to bring them for our next dinner, where people have gone on trips with people and they have become lifetime stories.
Yes.
Unfortunately,
Yes.
That's unfortunate. So I go back to a place where my mother, my grandmother, my auntie was very clear in saying everyone is not your friends.
Yeah.
And I am very particular in giving that label out. I have associates, I have old classmates, colleagues, random folks off the street. Everyone does not get that title, and everyone is not invited to the kitchen table as well. It's like, I come to my kitchen table. Because back in the day, if you were invited to someone's home and you were able to go into the kitchen and sit at the table, you were like, "Oh, I have arrived. I am part of the family because now I'm where everything goes down." Well, people don't have kitchen tables nowadays. I don't know what they're doing nowadays. I don't know how they figure out where they are on the scale of comfort and what have you. But that I want to discuss. I want to discuss friends.
Yeah. And making them, because people are very lonely. Like there's a demonstrable loneliness epidemic. And to go back to what you said, there's so much like virtual and digital engagement, and yet there's still such a gap of loneliness. And I feel like there's something in there, and really thinking about, what does it mean to call someone a friend? What's the difference between a friend and an acquaintance and a person who lives in your community? Like, those are all very different types of relationships.
It is. And this Virgo has her own definitions. I'll have to bring them.
Ooh, okay, you do the definitions next time.
I'm gonna make
how I am. I'm always like, let's start with how to define it.
Am I going to make a chart of, and this is how you are an acquaintance. You have this.
Oh my gosh. I want to see that chart. I really do.
It's like, according to the G.R. Houston Jack chart, you are not a friend, kid.
It needs to have glasses in it.
Even then, believe it or not, there's that next level that when you are so part of my life, you get family status. Which when I was younger, my mother gave at least 2 people who were not part of our family keys to the house. But we didn't even have keys to the house.
You're like, wait a minute.
Yes. So you knew that when you went from friend to being family, you had truly arrived, because now you're coming to the reunions, you're coming to the special events. It's crazy, but it's a thing. It really is a thing. So I'm going to see if other people do what I do, because But I was never the one who called everyone a friend. I was not that. I'm a very discerning Virgo. You know what I mean? So that'll be interesting. Oh my goodness. Aicila, we do it again. And it's it's the right time too, because before we wrap this up, I didn't bring any port today. I didn't bring any port. I didn't bring my nightcap. But it's the holidays.
Yeah.
We're coming into that season. Thanksgiving brings that to us, and people start to feel like they're on an island. And so, going into 2025, I want people to find their community and build some genuine relationships. That's what I want people to do.
Yeah.
So if we can help them do that, I mean, they can join our dinner table. There's plenty of room.
Absolutely.
There's plenty of room. There's plenty of food here.
Plenty of room here. Well, and for people that are going home and, I know sometimes it can feel loneliest being around the people that you grew up with and don't feel a sense of sharing. Take care of yourself. Like, I know some people are like, why would you do that? You love these people and time is short. And if that's a choice you're making, one, don't let anyone shame you for it. And two, take care of yourself. You're allowed to go for walks and do maybe put your phone down for a little bit and then go for a walk and call someone. And just remember you aren't as alone as you feel. And there's always a place and someone to talk to. And we both respond to our comments and just do what you can to have as connected of an experience as possible, because those moments of joy and connection are really, at least for me, what make everything else worth it.
I agree with you there. That, you know what? This is not a mic, but mic drop.
Mic to me.
All right, everybody, we're going to see you on the next one.
Talk about friends.
Friends. I'm thinking of Houdini. Okay, never mind. Let me, because we're going to keep going. Let me stop this thing. Let me stop.